We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Friday, May 30th. Yes, I believe it is. And welcome back, or welcome to a new edition of Stoppage Time with me, Uncle Rob, Tio Rob, or now Abuelo Rob. Here to share my thoughts on the week, inspired by my most recent episode of Entrepreneurial Thinkers, which we dropped this week, which was a conversation with Jessica Bedoya, who is the founder and managing partner of LARA Fund. And LARA Fund is an infrastructure-focused, primarily, private equity fund that is investing across Latin America, being raised here in the U.S., being led by her and a team of people who have deep sector knowledge and governmental past national security policy experience at the White House level, including her in her own career. And we had what is a conversation that actually spurred me to think about just kind of a broader set of realities in my life, which is that I tend to have this affinity for, or I step up in defense of, or love to amplify the stories of underdogs. And in many ways, you could make a case for Jessica's story, her own story, as a Latina leading a traditional private equity fund in a male dominated, frankly, white male dominated industry globally. You could make an argument that she in and of herself is an underdog. But it got me thinking as we went through and we had this deep conversation about the markets, the countries, the cities that she is traveling to as they build this fund, about her own experiences in raising the fund. Their goals and aspirations are that they raise $1 billion fund. They've already raised nearly 100 million of that, so they're well on their way, and they've really only been tackling this since last year, so early mid 2024. So quite a bit of progress already, incredible opportunities. She's leading the jet set life, bouncing around between kind of her temporary travel home in Miami. Her home city is in DC in the Virginia area, and that's where her son lives. But she's bouncing around doing the road warrior nomad thing as she builds relationships and plants seeds. Right? We always talk about plant those seeds of those trees that you will literally never live under the shade of. Right? There's that parable, and she's doing that as she plants seeds of relationships around Latin America. So got me thinking a lot about underdogs, got me thinking about why I have such an affinity for and love for underdog stories. And a couple of big takeaways from her conversation were in the episode, which I really encourage you to go listen to. If you're interested in the region, if you're in the region, no matter which kind of end of the stakeholder spectrum you're on, if you're an investor, if you're a government leader, if you're a family office leader, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a young student trying to better understand the markets and trying to find a way to get yourself involved, if you're someone who wants to be involved in and work in, build a career in private equity or venture capital, you would be well served to listen to Jessica's perspective on the region as well as her own personal journey and life story. But the couple of big takeaways that I had were, one, that there are moments of incredible opportunity in moments of chaos and uncertainty. Two, that the region as a whole is woefully underappreciated in comparison to other regions around the world, which on the surface, and it really does dig to our own biases and our isms, our racism, our colorism, our culturisms, right? That we have made determinations that certain regions of the world are more stable, safe, predictable, et cetera. And Latin America is riskier in that sense. And in fact, if you really think about it the way that she presents and we discuss it in the show, it is exactly the opposite of that in some ways. And so there's a huge opportunity there, and opportunities present themselves in uncertain times. There is something to be said again for betting on the underdogs. That's kind of one of the key takeaways as well. It's not just a story about her trying to build relationships and find infrastructure investment opportunities in Mexico or in Brazil. Yes, there are opportunities to do incredible things in those vast countries with huge economies, but there are also opportunities in El Salvador, in Paraguay, Uruguay, in Bolivia, in Peru, in Guatemala, where she is this week, Honduras, Costa Rica, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and so on and so on. That model that she's extrapolating in Latin America is also applicable in our own markets here in the United States, where I live, right? Or in the countries that you live and work in or invest in, right? There are always the secondary places that are beyond just the obvious bubbles that present incredible opportunities. And then I think another one of the takeaways might have just been this kind of sense of herself that she has grown into and appreciated how much kind of entrepreneurial capability she has inside of her, which I love this idea, right? She kind of grew her career in government and then some private sector work, but really rooted in the government and policy at the governmental level and at the federal level, right? And I don't care how talented you are, and she talks about this, right? Like when you go out in the private sector and all of a sudden you are the fund manager, you are the founder, you're running this business and you're the face of this organization in a region, in a new market, man, you got to figure it out on the fly. And you don't necessarily have all the aides and the staffers and the resources around you that you might have used to have had in the government job, right? And that's an opportunity and a challenge. And she has faced the challenge head on. She talks about that very explicitly, and she has turned it into an opportunity to grow, to learn about her best, better self, to position herself more confidently and differently, and to lean on those experiences and realize that a lot of those experiences travel. So a couple of big takeaways to encourage you to listen to this episode. Again, like I don't care which lens you're looking at this from, but it is a fascinating conversation that's rooted in this concept of underdogs. And what it really made me think of was, as I thought across all the other conversations that I have, all the other guests that we book on Entrepreneurial Thinkers, all the other people that are in my spheres of influence. So just as I was thinking about this to share with you all today, like I have emails and texts and WhatsApp groups that are going, and I have follow-ups that I'm doing. And those people are like, I'm looking at them going, man, they're the underdog. Like that person, she's the underdog in her market. That person is the underdog in their company. That company is an underdog in its space competitively. And I realized I just am drawn to this. And I got to thinking like, what does a middle-aged, white guy who grew up in relative privilege, middle class, upper middle class, in the United States, in Chicago, like was afforded all the opportunities of life that so many people are not, like, what does that guy have to be in the midst of like underdogs and the underserved and the undersupported and the under-resourced, or maybe the under-amplified, the stories who aren't told? Like, why am I there? And what right do I have to be there? And I kind of tried to overcomplicate it a little bit in my analysis. And then I realized I was actually born into underdog status, not me personally, but this is the funniest analogy ever, but like it makes sense to me, and everything else makes sense to me, which is I was born in downtown Chicago and then eventually became a North Sider. I was born to a North Side parent and a South Side parent, but by that point, the South Side parent was living on the North Side. And I became a Northwest Side kid, which means in Chicago, when you're born into that structure socially, you are a Cubs fan. And this is going to be an analogy that means nothing to people who don't follow American baseball and who less even maybe follow the Cubs and understand the history there. But when you grow up a Cubs fan, you are essentially born with an affinity and an understanding of the underdog life. It is notoriously, I literally grew up, and through the 1970s and 80s, like my childhood core year, the Cubs were just known nationally as lovable losers. I mean, like that was almost more of their branding moniker than Chicago Cubs Baseball Club, right? And so when you grow up at that, but yet you're a passionate sports fan and you are a proud North Sider and you pick the Cubs over the White Sox, which is the South Side Chicago team. We have two baseball teams in Chicago. And you are drawn to that. Like it doesn't matter win, lose, or draw, or win or lose in baseball, win, lose, or draw in soccer, right? Like it doesn't matter if you win or lose. Like you just are a fan for life. And there comes with that something. And that experience colors my entire life journey and now my professional work and the types of stories we tell. Like I have said repeatedly, if you've listened to any of the Entrepreneurial Thinker shows over the years, or previously when it was Mentors Today with my cohort and friend Ileana, like I openly have always said, like I have very little interest in telling the already known, already told stories of the already famous, already quote unquote successful people, like, and just regurgitating that same old pablum for our audiences and our communities. Like what I really want to do is I want to tell the undertold stories. I want to tell the stories. I want to amplify that. I want to get into the background of the why you, why this, why now, why should anybody care, to the people who usually aren't cared about, right? No matter where they fall on the strata or lay across the spectrum. And that's just fantastically more interesting to me. So this episode with Jessica this week really kind of got me thinking again about my roots and why I have this affinity for and love for the underdog. Jessica is herself an underdog. There are not many Latina leaders in her age category that are leading $100 million plus on their way to be $1 billion private equity funds that are investing in these types of markets. Latin America is an underdog story in and of itself, and I've said this openly since 2015. Like it is the underdog region in the world. It has its problems. We do here in the US, obviously now, right? So we are no more immune and sitting on a high moral horse than anywhere else in the world is. And so Latin America has its foibles and its weaknesses and its flaws, just like every other region does. There is a certain level of risk, but there's also not risk in the ways that there is in other countries and other regions of the world. And ultimately, like they're trying to build, she and the region are trying to build something that is a story that is the undertold underdog story. And investors in the US and in European Western markets and in more mature markets in the East would be wise to pay attention to people like Jessica and to markets like Latin America, because there is a massive opportunity, a massive future upside here in betting on underdogs. And I am all in on betting on underdogs. I'm going to continue to bet on underdogs. I'm going to continue to be an ally to the underserved and undersupported. Our shows are going to continue to skew towards telling the stories of incredibly talented, important leaders who come through the underdog lens and experience in their life. So I hope you have a great week. I hope you are passionate about whatever it is you're working on. I hope you can answer it unequivocally. Why you, why this, why now, and why should anybody care about your project, about your career, about your work, about the hobbies and the things that you do to spend your time. Yeah, this week it got me really thinking about underdogs, what it's like to be one, why it's important to back them and make bets on them, and how maybe in a lot of ways, a lot of us in some different things in our lives are underdogs in our own story too. So peace, love, joy, happiness. Please like, follow, subscribe. I hope you're enjoying these stoppage time shows in the Entrepreneurial Thinkers feed when you get the notifications, something different, something added, little extra perspective, little post-show, after-show thoughts on the show of the week and the week at large. And please do go check out this episode with Jessica. Again, like, follow, subscribe it. You can find it anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can find it on YouTube. I hope also, if you're a regular follower, listener of our shows, that you're enjoying our founding sponsors. Hope you're enjoying our ads about our founding sponsors and meeting them and understanding their businesses. So far, I think we've dropped in both Haney and Co. and then our friends at ePseudo, and we've got a couple more coming here in the coming weeks that are going to start popping into the feed. So we're super excited to be able to introduce you all to these incredible people who are supportive themselves as individuals and companies who are supportive of our work and my work at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. So love, happy weekend. We'll see you soon.